right, we are back. It's 2 p.m. and we will start with our first fireside chat. But first things first, we would have two incredibly, just incredible speakers. But unfortunately, one got sick, and yeah, he says he's sorry, and maybe we can look forward to meeting him next year. But Manuel Klarmann from the Eternity Institute will join us, and there he is already. Hi, Manuel.
Hi there. Do you hear me well?
Yes, I hear you. So just let me open here.
Perfect.
Slide.
Yeah, Jan got sick, but I'm perfectly able to chip in. I'm following everything that we did together, and
awesome.
He invited me anyway for the for content.
Okay,
so that's fine.
Great.
So we can do that.
So yeah, maybe you can introduce yourself quickly, then what Eternity is, and then maybe also what in what way you work together with vegans. So why why have we planned to have you both in one fireside chat?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, in that realm. So you go.
Yeah. So quick introduction about me. My name is Manuel Klarmann. I work for the last 10 years only on the topic to get precise carbon emission calculations for food and to make them public and spread the knowledge to facilitate and accelerate the advent of a sustainable food system. And in this journey, we met Jan and started last year to also score their food products that they have. They have a bunch of different food products here. One is this, and we started putting a score on the back of the package.
Yeah, we can see it.
Called the Eternity score, and so the idea is that every food product can have a carbon footprint. Jan is starting with it, but everyone else could have it too. And for Jan, I mean, like speaking a little bit for him, he last time I talked to him, he said basically it was me that convinced him that it's urgent and that we should do something about it, and that it's kind of a perfect marriage here because he's really good at marketing and spreading the knowledge and making campaigns and running on TV, and we're kind of here in the background to the calculations and to do the LCA, the life cycle assessments, and the scientific stuff. That we're a bit more nerds. We sit in front of computers. We shy away a little bit from the public here. So
all right,
good that I don't see anyone. But
so maybe just for all the participants to get you on board with what Jan and Vegans do. So it's a vegan food company, and they do a lot of also convenience products. So I would say, from my experience, that's like the niche where they're in. And just like Manuel said, they have a bunch of products. So from cookies to frozen vegan pizza to vegan protein shakes, and exactly. So that's what they do. And you guys helped them with these emission score on their packagings, yeah.
Exactly. Great. And I've prepared a presentation that I will give 10-15 minutes. That's really, really interesting.
Yeah, let's go.
And then we'll have about 10-15 minutes at the end for questions.
Perfect.
But that's the format that we have chosen instead of a fireside chat here. So to start everything off, the topic is eating for the climate, why food has a big impact on climate change. The first exclamation mark that I need to make is that it's not only the climate, but we have a scientific method that is called, or we have a fact that there are planetary boundaries, and we're overshooting these planetary boundaries, and climate is one of them. The other ones we also have overshot already are biodiversity and nitrogen. And just to carry a little bit the meaning of those home, nitrogen is the problem that it's called eutrophication, that we oversaturate our soil, our seas, our lakes, and they can collapse. So the interesting point about is that if the seas collapse, then it directly impacts our food system. With biodiversity, it's kind of the same thing. It's obviously the highest risk for humanity that we go extinct because we cannot measure it. It's really hard to measure how big the risk is, but it's most certainly the one of the most tremendous things that will happen that we should care about. you can kind of picture it that when we don't have bees anymore because the ecosystem collapses, then we don't have food anymore, and then it also is a big problem. When it comes to climate change, we obviously have the problems of weather catastrophes.
Sorry, Manuel,
from dry seasons to.
Can you share the slides in full screen, maybe?
It doesn't work.
We see the slides, but we're not seeing in full screen. So we're seeing the other slides on the left. I don't know if.
Yeah. Is it better like that? No?
Yes, perfect. All right, go on.
It was good. Okay, perfect. So, climate change has a huge impact on our society, specifically when it comes to our food system. And the biggest crisis that we're looking towards is that we think about sea levels rising and these weather catastrophes and so on, then we know that about 200 to 500 million people will lose their homes. So displacement and destruction of climate change will be worse than all human wars in history combined. And this kind of hallmarks like the tremendous danger that we're facing, and that's why we should do something as soon as possible. Obviously, a lot of people are doing something, going on the streets and claiming that urgency is a matter, as the latest IPCC calculations show. And that's already a couple of years old, that slide. We roughly have 8 years to save planet Earth. And it's obvious that we can't eat money. So it's obviously food related, the whole issue that we have here. And the fair question that is posed by the demonstrants, by the people, is, are we actually the last generation here on Earth to survive? Going back to this really beautiful graphic here about the planetary boundaries, just to show you the other sectors that are really a risk for going extinct as a human species, that we have not overshot yet, like deforestation, freshwater use, particle pollution, and so on. The interesting bit about this graph is if we put in the information about how this is targeting our food system, as we look to the proportion of agriculture that contributes to our food system, we can see that almost all of those problematic overshots, boundaries that were overshot, is due to the reason that we do agriculture. Most biodiversity loss is due to agriculture. Deforestation is due to agriculture. Freshwater use is agriculture. Obviously, fertilizers and the nitrogen and phosphorus cycle is due to agriculture. And 25% of the climate crisis is due to agriculture. That also means that when we take food from our field, from our land, agriculture, and then we also pack it and pre-process or process that food and deliver it to supermarkets, this 25% shoots up to 30%. So about 1/3 of all greenhouse gas emissions originate from our food system. And that is kind of the big message here, because this basically means if you look at Germany or other countries and our carbon footprint that is currently at 11 or 12 tons of CO2 per person, knowing that it's about 1/3, like bottom-up calculations, it's about 2 to 3 tons tons of CO2 per person a year. We can understand that it's not possible to reach any climate goal at all if we do not reduce emissions that are also within that food sector. So it's adamant that we also change what we eat in order to meet these climate goals. It's even more important to stretch that when you look at the perspective how the food system is currently developing as the world population grows and we have potential yield decreases due to climate change. We also know that it's not going to be 1/3, but it's going to be 2/3 of all greenhouse gas emissions. And that brings kind of the point home that 1/3 is already bigger than all transportation combined. It's already bigger than all heating, electricity production combined in greenhouse gas emissions. It's such a big fraction, and it's such importance that we do something that it still staggers me, and it still confuses me that it's not a topic that is currently discussed on a political or entrepreneurial perspective on the likes as the cars and the renewable energies and so on. But it should be on eye to eye with these things that we're trying to find solutions. So that's kind of the heavy part, the kind of the dark side of all these things. The light side and also the project with Vegan falls into that perspective that it's quite easy to decide to save a lot of CO2 when it comes to food. It's just a decision that you can make right now, basically. Not you don't need to wait a week or two, or you need to spend money or anything. You can just decide right now to eat just those foods that have 50% or even less CO2 emissions. Someone actually started calculating what's the minimum amount of food composition, like the diet change that we need to do to be compliant with the planetary boundaries, but also have a healthy diet. That was the Lancet Commission and Marco Springmann. And they calculated, in order to minimally meet the climate and other planetary boundaries requirements, we need to reduce our red meat consumption and our milk consumption. And I put that here on the slide in relation to Germany. We know that we need to reduce to about 1 portion of red meat per week. And we need to reduce our milk consumptions to about 2 liters per week. And at the same time, we need to up vegetables, fruits, soybeans, legumes, and nuts to obviously have a healthy and flexible, good diet. So this is where we need to be in Germany by the year 2030 to meet all these goals. And it's quite rough if you think about it, that the whole population need to change their like by tomorrow. That's obviously impossible, but it's quite feasible if you think about it, that this was kind of the diet that we already ate, like, I don't know, 50, 60 years ago. And we still have kind of 8 years here in Germany to reach that diet composition in order to meet these goals. What is also to be said about this diet is that this diet, like in the calculation in this Nature publication, he really calculated that if we do the most to save food waste, to reduce packaging, to reduce transportation distance, if we do the max, or like kind of the practical max on these levels, then we still would need to change that diet. So it's really kind of the minimum, and it's there's no way, like the reductions that we can yield through food loss and transportation distance minimization and so on are 10 to 15%, but we need to reduce at least 50 to 64%. So it's kind of clear that we need to reduce 50% of greenhouse gas emissions in the next 8 years. So that's kind of the challenge. That is kind of the why to this whole presentation, why we need to do something and what it has to do with each other. It, like, these numbers and everything up to these studies is derived from a method that is called life cycle assessment, which is a scientific method where you look at the process of one particular food or one particular food processing, production process. For example, the tractor goes over the field, you have fertilizers that you bring out, you have a yield, you transport it, and you can break it down into each individual process and then kind of look at that process, what goes in, what comes out, how many emissions are generated through the chemical processes there. And this is a kind of careful process that takes a couple of weeks for each of these. But in the end, you get a number, for example, for a carrot, that it has 33 grams of CO2 equivalent. And you kind of know what kind of angles you need to twist, if it's organic, if you reduce the transportation distance and so on, how much it's going to be better. And this is done for hundreds of different food items. This is collected from, I don't know, thousands of years of scientific work that are done from different organizations. And the consensus is, just to give you the most important facts about it, is that seasonal and local is great, but local is really stupid if we have winter and we grow tomatoes in a greenhouse. So seasonal and local only makes sense if it's both at the same time. The other interesting fact that comes about is that airplanes are really, really bad, but if something comes with a ship, it's totally okay. If it's asparagus, or if it's the avocado, if it's grown in Spain, or if it's grown in South Africa, if it comes by ship, the CO2 impact of it is rather small. It's not cool if it comes by airplane. And the third, obviously, is that anything plant-based is better than animal-based proteins. Here we come circling back to vegans. The beef is 3 to 4 times worse than the chicken because it both emits methane. Cheese is obviously from beef. And the main contribution, and that is also published in the latest IPCC special report for climate change and land, shows that most of the greenhouse gas emissions from the food sector are coming first out of deforestation or land use change, mostly rainforests being cut down. Second, it comes from methane from beef production. And third, it comes from fertilizer use, that we bring fertilizer on the field, the sun shines in it, and it dampens out. And it's important to mention here that it doesn't matter if you have artificial fertilizers or animal-based fertilizers. Both of them are brought on the field and then create greenhouse gases. So these are the three most important aspects that we need to reduce. And you kind of guess it, the more we go vegan, the better it is. Yeah. So just a glimpse, these are a couple of our database that we've been working on with these various organizations. These are some credentials about who we work with, how you would calculate the routing distance for different foods, and really like bringing home the point that in these calculations that are made, rainforest deforestation from the fertilizers on the field up to the methane from the cow or from aquaponic systems to packaging and storage, everything is included to do a thorough calculation here. Basically with the message, hey, if we know what kind of foods are good or bad for the environment, we can choose the one that are better. We can choose, like, we don't need to choose from Zurich Schnetzeltes down to the Gemüse Lasagne that is vegan, but also in kind of the middle sector, we can improve a lot. Right. Are you still there?
Yeah, I am. I was just listening. Love it. So yeah, we actually have 3 questions. I don't know if you want to add anything to the presentation.
So, yeah, that's perfect. So we can answer the questions because I have kind of 2 chapters, and we can answer the question about the technical aspects, and then I come towards the solution. That is also really interesting. What we can do, also what we do with vegans, but then there's also another kind of release story here coming from what we're going to do. Yeah.
All right.
But shoot with the question. That's great.
Sure. Let's go with the first one. In your opinion, is it necessary to go completely meatless to save the climate?
I'm going back to the slide. For the whole population in Europe, or let's say Germany, we need to reach that diet here. Just make a screenshot. You can see that it has the grams per day of different vegetables and legumes, and then it has also the grams per day of different meats. So it allows for the same amount of chicken, the same amount of fish that we eat right now to stay within that stuff, but we need to reduce on red meats, that is lamb, pork, and beef, by 84%. And this is the minimum that we need to reach on average. So that's the goal.
All right. So first question asked, first question answered. The second one, what's the perfect scenario? A circular farming style?
I don't know if it has anything to do with farming or circular farming. Like in an ideal world, we could obviously find a kind of agricultural system that we don't need to put fertilizers on, but it's kind of like really, really extensive. So it doesn't emit additional greenhouse gases there. But I question if we could produce enough food for the whole planet in this style or manner. So it has nothing to do about how we try to improve production or how we technologically innovate these systems. It really has only to do with what people are going to eat.
Okay, so you would say the choice of like either if you choose plant-based or animal-based has a much bigger impact than if your plant-based food are like from a mono.
You could almost say it's the only impact that we can actually have. Anything else is just single-digit numbers in percent. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Good to know. And James Wardle asks, interesting idea. How do you fund your business?
So like coming to the business, this would be now my next chapter. That's great.
Perfect.
So the basic idea here of Eternity is this appetite for change. So we thought about collecting data and writing software to make it widely accessible that everyone can have these calculations. And we have 2 revenue streams. One coming from the gastronomy, where we kind of connected our system with their menu planning system, so we can show them on every meal how much CO2 they have for each meal, what are the climate-friendly meals, climate-friendly meaning 50% less, and how are they performing month over month in comparison to all other restaurants. This is a nice report that we deliver. This is a service that we provide to over 100 restaurants already. Interestingly, like the Environmental Ministry of Germany and Switzerland obviously are part of the program, and a couple of others. So they get these things, and they pay us a license, a yearly license of 2K. We've shown that in these projects we can reduce up to 20% in 2 months if someone really tries to compete for reducing a lot of CO2 emissions, and found out that it's quite easy to do that if people really want to reduce these emissions from a restaurant perspective, because we can't force the guest to eat more climate friendly, but we can provide them more attractive options on the climate friendly side. If it's the Beyond Burger or supplementing half the meat with some meat substitute, and finding great techniques to do that.
Right.
This is that's one of the businesses that we do. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have a question that would also add to one that I would have asked. So Lorna asks, how do you incentivize the businesses to use your scorecard, especially those who are more traditional or price sensitive?
Yeah, it's kind of tricky. I stopped working or trying to convince people, like personally, like calling restaurants and saying, "Hey, let's work together." And it's also not necessary anymore. Like a lot of restaurants, they want to do something. A lot of personal, private run or like family businesses that want to do something, and they approach us. There's even like restaurants that kind of mandated that they do something, like schools or universities and so on. So we just sit there and basically wait. I've given up on trying to actively convince like persons individually.
All right, interesting approach. Do you think? Well, quite obviously, I would assume that one very important thing for you would also be that governments would, and that's something that obviously then has something to do with the question of Lorna and Rahul. If governments would incentivize this more in terms of, hey, if your restaurant or your food brand starts, labeling with the Eternity score or with any other CO2 emission score, you get some special subsidies or anything. So
yeah, perfectly.
Are you doing some work there already?
Yeah. So it's really step by step. So the number one thing is that we need to get measurability, because if we can't measure, we can't improve. It's kind of vague in which direction we should shoot. But it's kind of like the idea that we need to aim for the right goals, and then we need measurability. This measurability allowed pilots and pioneers and lighthouse projects to emerge, like vegans, like these restaurants, to showcase that it's completely possible with a diverse audience to actually reduce a lot of CO2 emissions. And given these two things, that we can measure and that we have positive examples, we can start stepping on the toes of those who don't do anything. And stepping on the toes basically means politically we can try to get forward with the CO2 Kennzeichnung, with the CO2 emission labeling of foods, that there will be a law to label it, or even later put a carbon tax on it. And I think if we want to reach the masses, the millions and billions of people, there needs to be political consensus behind the idea that this is something that is possible and that is like feasible from a technical perspective, but also attractive for businesses to hop on. And that we need to confirm and open those doors, and then we can get everything rolling. And that's what we're working on. I'll go in detail in the last slides. It's the most exciting part.
All right. Yeah. So I think we have one last question, and then you can go further with your slides. I love your work. Congrats. How do you plan to convince people to eat healthier? Should we force governments to put higher tax on red meat and milk, for example? Well, forcing is...
I think it's really hard to force governments to do anything. So, yeah, if you can, do it. But not really. So... to convince people to eat more healthy, like these calculations, they're quite intricate, that they take a lot of time and for the CO2 emissions, but at the same time, it's really easy actually to complement in about what is healthy and what is not healthy food. So it's a metric that could just go along. Will kind of be a topic about the Nutri-Score anyway that is being established. That's another power that is driving it forward. But in the end, how do we force politics to do the right thing? I don't know. I mean,
yeah, I mean that's
my idea is that showing them how it could work, and convincing them that it's not so hard, and having businesses speak out about that it's possible, and businesses speak out that it's good for their business, kind of like makes the bet for them be, well, then we can do it. Yeah.
All right, then I would say go on with your last slides.
Yeah, the last couple of slides. So the whole thing with the restaurants, it's usually system gastronomes, basically restaurants for employees, but we wanted everyone to get that knowledge. So we did that small app here that everyone can just access for free on our website. You can log in and compose a recipe. Actually, this is actually also a recipe from Vegans, as it happens to be, for a cashew cheese. But you can just log in. You need to provide your email and get free access for 30 days. And then you can compose different recipes out of different ingredients, specify the ingredients, where they come from, and so on. And then you get a CO2 value and a CO2 calculation. And also you get a comparison against the average. That is really important. So we have done over 30,000 calculations for different recipes, and we can compare each individual compositions that you make with that average and show you, well, this one is 76% better or 30% better. So we can give you guidance on when you reach the 50% CO2 reduction. And that whole concept we used to start labeling also the food products of Vegans, where you saw in the very beginning that we score these products. And that is really interesting. So the score basically means that we have calculated the exact carbon emissions of the product, 128 grams for these choc bars with coconut. Also calculate the water footprint, so how much water was actually used and how scarce was that water. It's not about the water in total, but it's kind of how scarce the water is, which basically means that if we're taking it away from people that need it, which is not a problem in Germany, but in other countries. Then we check also for animal welfare or animal protection and for how much rainforest is being cut down. And then for each of these four calculations or Abklärung checks, we put a rating on it. And the 3 stars basically means if it gets 3 stars, then it means it is within the goal of a sustainable food system. It reduces more than 50% of the greenhouse gas emission. It's where we need to be as a whole society in 8 years. If it has 2 stars, it's still better than average. It's not there yet, but it's great because it reduces CO2 emissions. If it's 1 star, it's kind of bad. It's worse than average, and it's everything that is basically worse than average. So you should avoid buying stuff that has just 1 star. And here we see also not everything is perfect. The water score in this case is only 1 star. But there are other ways to tackle the water issue, other ways to go about that problem. So it's not like 200 or 500 million people that need to migrate. It's not as dramatic as climate change. But they wanted to be transparent, so we put everything on there. Yeah, this is a score. We just work with the companies, obviously, that want to work with us here, that want to do the calculation with us and print it on a package, that want to be transparent. That's not everyone. And that's why we have started working together with CodeCheck. And CodeCheck is an app that has 4 million registered users, about 1.6 million active users. And we took all of their database, all of the food products that they have, and we ran it through our engine that we originally built for the restaurants, and we did 80,000 calculations. We calculated the carbon footprint of 80,000 food products, and we're right now working with them to publish all these data so that you can scan basically almost every product in the supermarket, and then you get this nice climate score that says how much CO2 it causes and if it's good or bad or not. And then you can click on it, and then you see also the details of the calculation. So it's completely transparent what's going on. And this will kind of hallmark the situation that, we can basically make everything transparent about how much CO2 every food causes. We can take that information and walk to the Bundestag and say, well, it's not even a problem. We have all the calculation. We maybe can improve them in detail a little bit, but it's kind of done that work. And we're going to elaborate on that work. It's not 80,000 where we're going to start. That's just what we did over the last 3-4 months. We took the aim and the goal to calculate actually every food product on the planet. It's about 2 to 3 million food products, but still kind of feasible. We calculated that we can do it. If we did that in 3 months, we should be able to reach a couple of million. And that's the big announcement here. And that's also when the time is over, like 30 minutes gone.
Wow, awesome.
I had kind of a plaidoyer at the end, but I'm basically done with the presentation. Yeah.
Great. So I'm a CodeCheck user myself, so I'm looking forward to this new feature. Great, yeah, great work you're doing. I think the people liked it a lot. So yeah, everybody can reach out to Manuel, of course, here on Talk, or maybe also connect via LinkedIn. Go check out the Eternity Institute. Manuel, thank you so much for joining us. I think everybody learned a lot, and we're looking forward to seeing your labeling on much more food products in Germany, Europe, and maybe all across the world.
That would be great. Exactly.
Awesome.
And
thank you.
Just for a last information,
Yes,
I have a minute, right? Or you need to cut me off. You need to cut me
1
off.
minute.
1 minute.
1 minute pitch.
The whole idea of it is that we take responsibility because we can, not because we mandated to. And that's kind of important to remember, that we really live in a wealthy state. We have an education, we have enough food, we have shelter and everything. We have an opportunity that billions of people don't have. And that kind of like demands, it's a kind of a moral imperative that we do something. That's why we're working, and that's why we hope that you also join. 3 climate-friendly meals saves 1 billion tons of CO2. So kind of start cooking smart for the ones you love. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much.